From the snow-capped mountains of the west to the cypress swamps of the south and everywhere in between. This is the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Nelson. Welcome back, guys. You are now listening to part 2 with Mr. Howard Hensley. Guys, we're back. More stories here with Mr. Hensley. We talked a little bit about some other stories he would want to tell, and one of them that was intriguing to me was the Indian fish trap story. So let's tell me a little bit about what that's about.
All right, this is early 80s in Jenkins County, Georgia, on the Ogeechee River. A real swampy river. You can literally get lost in this one. And it was the Thursday before my long weekend. And I was working with my first sergeant at the time, and he was single. So we had nobody. I lived it by myself. And when I was living down there, I lived in a camper. And so we had some fish traps that we had located, and we knew who had them. He was a Native American Indian that lived in the area.
Before you go further, because even myself, maybe this younger generation, what does a fish trap even look like? What is it?
It's usually it's a square basket-like thing made out of chicken wire or some kind of mesh that has a V-shape opening at one end with a small opening, okay? Some people bait them, but normally you just point them near a stump where the fish is swimming upstream, and they swim in there and to eat the bait or just their natural travel. And once they get in that small opening, they can't get out.
So it's kind of like a big version of like a minnow trap or something you see now down on the coast.
Similar to it. But
yeah, I just wanted to kind of tell people what that was, because I'll be honest with you, when you said a fish trap, I guess I've just never been around a true quote-unquote fish trap.
But down there it was a common thing that the poachers used to catch a lot of fish. They would sell the fish or whatever. And the Ogeechee River is famous. It's one of the cleanest. I think it's deemed the cleanest river in the state of Georgia.
Okay. And we know it's not the Savannah River.
Which was ranked one of the top, I think it was the top 3 dirtiest river in the United States.
I believe it. But anyway.
I got in trouble about talking like that one time, so that's another story. So we set up, we found the traps, and we decided to go in and catch this guy. So we go in there an hour or two before daylight. We pull our boat. It's a 14-foot John with a 25 Mariner on it. We pull our boat up out of the river and put it way over to the back. You can't see it from the river. And then we walk about a half a mile through the swamp down to where we can watch one of the fish baskets that's under the water, of course. Can't see it, but we located it. And so we sat there all day long. No traffic whatsoever. And this is a Thursday, and he supposedly was off Wednesday and Thursday, so we knew he was coming. So it didn't happen. So finally it's dark now, and we hear a putter coming down. That part of the Ogeechee River is limited to a 9.9 engine, but we can have a 25 because we're law enforcement. So we hear his little Evinrude putting down the river, and we can't see. It's dark. It's pitch black dark. And then we hear him throw a weight and bloop, in the water. He pulls it up, and then when the metal trap lays on his aluminum boat,
we hear all the fish flopping.
Yeah, they hear all the flopping. Perfect, So we wait for him to get his fish, and he cranks up. He heads on down, So we run to the boat. Because he's got to come back by us, okay? So we run to our boat. We push the boat in the dark into the water, drop the motor, crank it up, take off. I get up on plane, and about the time I get up on plane, it shuts off back into the water. Crap, I'm full of gas. What's going on? So I look around, I pull the cowling off, and someone had cut the fuel line. My Indian's pretty slick, okay? someone had cut the fuel line, which really, yielded it. It cranked up. There was a little gas in the carburetor, a little bit of gas in the line.
So how far away was where you stashed the boat to where the trap was?
200 yards.
And you never heard him or knew that he had
Nothing.
messed with y'all's boat. And I'm assuming you had the boat kind of hidden.
Yeah, it was hidden. You could not see the boat. We even pulled it up in an area of reeds so we could push the reeds back down. I was a big time. When I pulled into a hidey hole at night to catch a night hunter, I broke me off a pine top over here and I brushed my tracks out. Or I would drive back and forth several times going both ways to make it look like it's just normal traffic.
Right.
But you don't just back up in a hidey hole and they see one set of tracks going in. They know you're there. You follow me? So I was great at covering my tracks, but this guy, he's an Indian, he saw the sign. Something told him it was over there. So he had to pull up there, get out of his boat, walk up on the bank. And a lot of times you'll have a little ebb next to the river, and then there's a hump, and then there's another place where the water backs up.
Right.
That's where our boat was. So he had to get up and then have the nerve to look around and cut our gas line. So the ranger I was with, they called him BR because they called him Baby Ranger. One of the deputies gave him that nickname, and it stuck even to this day. And so me and BR are like, what are we going to do? So I've always had a little bit of humor to me, and he got away. So now it's totally dark. It gets dark at 9 o'clock down there. So now it's like 10:15, and I took my Leatherman tool and I cut my gas line and went straight to the carburetor, bypassed a little quick disconnect, and I was going to do that, and it just wouldn't crank. So I looked at BR and he looked at me, and I said, about that time a big old hootie owl let out a scream. And I looked at William and I said, we're going to die out here. I said, think about it. We're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Nobody's going to come looking for us until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, We're going to die out here. And he took the boat paddle trying to beat me off of him because he's a little bitty guy. And I was like, help me. We're going to die out here, And I just thought at the time it was like, what an idiot, But that Indian was super slick. And so the picture I showed you with the boat full of all the fish baskets, that was the following week. I gave up on him. He beat me.
You never caught him.
I didn't catch the Indian, no.
How about that?
He got away, yeah. Fair's play, I'll give him that one.
He got away, and I'm assuming he moved his traps and all after that. He knew the gig was up around that area.
Well, I took his traps. We confiscated them and the fish.
Okay.
But it was just this that, we heard it. We heard it all going on. We heard him throw his weight out and hook it, and then pull the net up or the basket up, set it down there, and the fish clamping on it. And excuse me, but I just thought it was if you think about it, the dangers of our job. We were in a place that people don't come, and literally we had no radios back then.
Yeah, back then there's no GPS, no cell phone, none of that.
Nothing. And we were in an area where we were probably going to spend a couple nights down there.
In a hot Georgia, I'm assuming it's summertime?
Yeah.
Hot Georgia swamp? Good God almighty.
Mosquitoes eat you up. And but when we both realized that the motor won't crank, he's gone, nobody's coming tonight. We're going to at least spend the night. And then that hootie owl let out that screech like they do, And I just, we got to die out here.
Well, how did y'all get out?
I ended up piddling with it a little bit and was able to get the fuel clamped on directly to the carburetor, pumped it up, and
got it out.
We finally got it cranked.
So I guess that's one of those things where the game warden always does not get the.
No.
That's pretty good one. Tell me about this blue litmus deer bait case.
Okay, this was I had a female officer working with me a while when I was a sergeant, and I had located some bait, and I followed the trail. And lo and behold, he had his mode of transportation from his mobile home was a golf cart. And in the golf cart was a bag of corn, an empty bag of corn. So,
I'm assuming at this time there was no
this was
baiting
back,
going on.
This was back before we could, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm anti-bait. I don't think we should hunt over it. I think it's causing a lot of problems, although the experts say it doesn't. But when you're feeding an animal in one spot and he's pooping there, and every animal within 3 or 4 miles is coming to the same spot, I just think it's a bad combination medically. I think
Well, I think they say a lot of the that chronic wasting disease is being spread by that. And I know that chronic wasting disease is a big, hot topic of discussion in itself. There's a lot of guys out there that are claiming it's been around for eons, and they're just using it as basically a financial tool. So I don't know.
I sort of see, because you're right. It's been around for how long? Ever?
That's what they say.
I mean, I remember the 70s when they were fighting it out west. So
right,
it's here now.
Right.
So, but anyway, so we go in there and we see the golf cart. So we follow the trail. I knew where the stand was, and the guy's there. It's a landowner, lives in a trailer, hunting on his land. There was a big pile of corn right there, and his claim was he didn't know the corn was there. I said, okay.
Bet you never heard that one before.
Never heard that one. And then we had been working, me and that female officer had been on the lake working, and we had arrested somebody for boating under the influence, and there's vials we get of blood, and we don't use the purple top. So I just stuck it in my uniform. I just had it there. So you familiar with the vials they draw blood?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like a test tube looking thing. So we get the guy, and he says, I did not know that corn was there. I swear I didn't know the corn was there. And I said, well, come on with me. So we walked up there to his golf cart. And I mean, it's better when the person says, you know what, you got me, because so we get to the golf cart, and I stopped and got some of the bait, some of the corn that was in front of his stand. When we got at the golf cart, I opened that tube up, and that female officer, she was new. She looked at me like, what are you doing? And I dropped 3 pieces of the corn in the purple top. Then I got the corn out of his golf cart, and I dropped 3 of those in. I put the cap back on, and I shook it. I said, now, if this turns purple, it's the same corn. And I shook that stuff up, and it broke the little anticoagulant that was in the bottom of it up, and it turned purple. And the guy said, all right, you got me. Got me. So that was the blue litmus test on the deer bait. Okay. It worked several times.
If it turns purple, it's from the same.
You're guilty, buddy. Guilty.
What about this, another one I found pretty interesting, and what a terrible luck this guy had. Tell me about the guy deer hunting on the game warden's property.
Okay. I had a nice tract of land up there, Appleton, Georgia, outside of Augusta. And I lived there and had a few horses and everything, and quite a bit of deer. And I'd been watching a nice 10-point buck for my stepson, Nick. He had never killed a deer, and I wanted him to kill a nice one. And this was a nice, respectable deer. So one day I was off, and I'm in my bib, camo up. I told Nick, I said, come on, that deer's ready to get shot. It was the 3rd day since I had seen him, and you know how they pattern.
Oh, yeah.
So we started headed. It was probably 400 or 500 yards from my house. So we're trailing down there, and got our orange vest on, got one rifle for him. And about that time we hear boom, right from where we were headed to. I was going to set up on a little hill. And as we get closer, I told Nick, I said, Nick, he probably just shot your deer. So do you want to hunt, or do you want to go kick some ass? He said, I want to kick some ass, Pops. I said, okay. So we head on down there, and I see this guy sitting up in a portable stand, a climber.
Now, the preface is this is on your property.
This is on my land. Yeah.
I got you.
This is my land, So I walk up there, and then I see the buck laying down, the little white belly, dadgummit. And so I made sure he saw us with our orange, and I waved at him. I walked up to him. I said, dude, you ain't got no orange vest? He said, nah, man. I said, whose land is this? He said, I don't know. I said, yeah. I said, this is the game warden's property. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, do you know who I am? And he said, the game warden? I said, that's right. Come on down.
Bad luck.
Bad luck. Bad luck. I mean, messed him up. So, yeah, that was a game. And then that didn't end up good for him when he went to court either, because went to court. You want me to talk about that?
Go ahead.
And I'd met this gentleman before. He was young, not very responsible at the time. He ended up being a very great guy, a respectable guy. But
we all
go through that little spell. I told you about mine one time.
Oh yeah,
we'll cover that later. And so the judge called us up there at my case, and it was like he said, "Well, Sergeant Hensley, tell me what happened." And I said, "On such a date, around 1700 hours, I heard a gunshot on my property. I pursued it. I identified this young man sitting in a deer stand with no orange on and a dead deer laying right there. And whose land was this? This was my land, Your Honor." He said, "Oh, that's not very smart." I said, "Nope." And he looked at the guy and he said, "Sergeant Hensley, have you had any trouble with him before?" I said, "I've caught him slipping on land before." He said, "All right." So he asked the fella, he said, "You got anything to say for yourself?" He said, I'm guilty." I said, "All right." And he took the gavel and he hit it. And he said, 1 year to serve in the county jail. And, woo. I was expecting, $700, $800 for the violations. And boy, got a little weak kneed, and the bailiff took him out. And then, later on, there was a couple more stories. You want me to go into?
Go ahead.
Okay. And I noticed there was a businessman there that had a employee theft thing, and he was here in the case. He was a good friend of mine. And then there was a new Columbia County deputy that had a prostitution for hire charge against a lady. And the judge found her. They got up there, and the deputy was sort of comical when he was telling about what happened. And then the girl had I'm guilty. She said, "I'm guilty." And the judge said, wham, $200 fine. By that time, it was a lunch break, and it was at the old Columbia County courtroom that was very crowded. So we got, 200 people going down a single aisle stairs, and the businessman was standing there like that right next to me, and we're going down the stairs all crunched up, and there's deputies everywhere in the public. And the businessman said, "You know what, Mr. Howard?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'd rather my wife get caught prostitution than poaching in Columbia County."
Yeah, for $200 versus a year in jail, I guess I would too.
I said, That's right. And then, so we went to lunch. We came back, and at the close of court, the judge said, "Mr. Bailiff, where's my deer poacher?" And he said, he's in the detention center. He said, "Well, fetch him over here to me." Brought the guy back in. He came in with shackles, orange clothing, all that stuff. And he asked him if he was gainfully employed. He said, yeah. And he said, "Well, here's what I'm going to do." And he asked me, he said, "How many officers do you have?" And I said, 6. And he said, "Do y'all have ballistic vests?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "How much are they?" I said, "They're $500 a piece." And he told the gentleman, he said, "In lieu of 12 months in jail, if you'll pay $3,000 to purchase vests for these officers, I'm going to let that be your conviction." And the fellow said, "Okay." And
I bet he did.
Yes, he did. And like I said, since then, I've known the guy, I've met him and talked again, and he turned out to be a great person. And a lot of the people I've caught, I've found them later, and they usually thank me, thanks for treating me fair. And that means a lot to me. Sure.
Well, that kind of leads me into the next story. You told me a little bit about the sheetrock guy.
Yeah.
That was one of those come full circles. And, game wardens, law enforcement in general can get a quote unquote bad rap.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of that also could, kind of like look in the mirror, if you're not doing something illegal, maybe that won't happen to you.
True story.
Yeah, a lot of times. So, the people that own up to it is, in my opinion, the man thing to do. Just own up to what you did and pay your fine and move on if you're going to do something illegal.
Yeah.
And we've all, even if you didn't mean to, have broken some sort of law between, at some point in your life. You'd be lying if you said you didn't. If you've lived long enough, doesn't necessarily mean that you meant to do it. But some of the laws are there for a good reason, especially these game laws. I mean, you don't want guys out there shooting all these deer at night. You don't want guys crossing your property line and shooting animals that you've spent a lot of time, and money on your land to try to get these animals to be there. And I mean, I get all that.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but anyway, the sheetrock story to me that you kind of gave me a quick highlight kind of showed how sometimes stuff comes back full circle.
Yeah. Yeah. I moved to South Carolina, and just for the record, everybody out there, I've hunted all over the world. And even today, if I'm hunting in Georgia, I hunted quail last year, or if I'm hunting in South Carolina, where I live now, or if I'm hunting in Alaska, you see that green truck, I still get nervous, It's perfectly normal.
Yeah, perfectly normal.
Because I realize, especially with duck hunting, it's
Dude,
difficult.
You need a damn college degree. I'm telling you, don't get me going down the road about duck laws.
How you going to ID them ducks, And it's a lot of responsibility.
I hate to butt in on you right here, but you brought up something that hits home to me. And we're not going to solve the world's problem sitting at this table, but some of these duck laws are so dated. When you start looking at some of the laws that they have that go all the way back to the market hunting days.
Right.
Some of these tagging laws, you're only allowed 3 days worth of possession limits of waterfowl. Okay, so in the state of Georgia or the Atlantic Flyway, we're allowed 60 days to hunt. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. You're allowed 6 ducks per day. Obviously, there's some species limitations to that. But let's say you go out and you legally harvest 3 days worth of ducks. So now you've got 18 ducks. If I go hunting day number 4 and I haven't cooked these ducks, got rid of these ducks, you are now lawfully hunting, but you're unlawful in your possession limit, even though they're at home. Most game wardens that I know aren't going to come in and start seeing what you've got packed in your freezer.
But I've done it before.
But technically they can.
Yeah.
And that to me is something that is so outdated that I think some of those laws need to be looked at, because those are the kind of laws, in my opinion, that makes a law-abiding citizen get aggravated with law enforcement if they start down the path of really wanting to nitpick some of this stuff. Now, I'll also say that, if they've gone out and they've shot 40 ducks today and then they've kind of asked for it and then you start finding out, I get that. But some of these laws are just common sense to me that we need to revamp. You may disagree with me.
No. Listen, we're trying to recruit hunters. And yet, like you said, and I'll agree, I've had trouble identifying some ducks. When I was at University of Georgia, the wildlife school, our test was he covered the duck, and we had to identify the duck by the feet. And you can do it, And I had a friend of mine call, you probably know him, a good businessman in this area, and he called me from the Mississippi Flyway a couple weeks ago, end of the season, him and some buddies were out there, and he said, now tell me how I can bring these ducks home. Do I leave one wing? Do I leave the head? And it's ridiculous. He had there was 8 people hunting for 5 days, and even if they killed their limit every day, how you going to get them home?
They're illegal. If you hunt for 5 days and when he's out there like that, most likely you're not eating those birds while you're there.
No.
You might eat some.
Right, but you can't eat all of them.
Nope. And then you got Lacey violation acts when you start crossing state lines with animals like that. So now you're talking about you could get federal charges. I've got personal friends of mine that have gotten jammed up big time with tagging violations and this wasn't a Georgia case, with legally harvested birds. and they were gifting some of these birds so they wouldn't be over the possession limit.
Right.
They crossed the state line. They were hunting on a border state. They crossed the state line with the birds to gift these birds. And considering they did not have these birds tagged and they were clean, they didn't have a wing on them, they got busted. It was a setup. A guy set them up and turned them over to the game warden. The game warden hammered them. I know that case personally, so I know that happened. This isn't a would you, could you, shoulda kind of thing. This is that right there. Technically, that is the law, but the birds were legally harvested. The birds were, being gifted so they could legally continue to hunt, and they still got trouble. And I mean, thousands of dollars in fines for this. I don't personally agree with that. I have nothing wrong with the game warden, and the game warden technically was doing his job. So what I think we need to do is we need to push to make some common sense laws out of these ducks, for at least for ducks, so you don't have to have a book this thick right here to be able to go duck hunting.
Well, I totally agree with you. And before I take my son duck hunting, he's 10. I got a 10-year-old. I mean, I got to run him through a biology class to make sure he can identify a bird.
And that's no shit.
It's not. And I mean, as a game warden, I was checking people and I was seeing ducks I'd never seen before because of where they were hunting. And I'm like, and then when I, as a hunter, was in Arkansas or Minnesota or Mississippi rather, and I'm hunting over there, I'm like, am I right? And I was a captain with DNR, And so here's what I'm thinking. You have to, let's go back 40 years. Numbers, quotas, they said they weren't there. They were there. I mean, I can show you papers where I'm getting acknowledged, you led the state, you led the region, number of violator contacts, number. And that's something when I finally got promoted, I went to bat. We got to get out of this. Well, we don't have a quota. You just have to meet within plus or minus 5% of the region average. Well, if I'm working in Augusta, Georgia, I'm not going to have the same activity somebody in Burke County.
Correct.
Yeah,
because you're dealing with city folks versus the landscape is set up more for hunting in Burke County.
So how do we fix that? Legislation is all I can say. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Find a newspaper, get a time stamp, take a picture of your birds for the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th. And if you get checked, you're not going to get checked unless they're trailing you, unless they've targeted you. Pretty much so. Show them the time stamp. I killed these then, I killed these then, I killed these then, And I even told my buddy, I said, if you want to get a cooler and pack them on dry ice and ship them home, you'll be safe that way,
Yeah, I tell you.
I understand your frustration.
Yeah, to me, that is just, and as much as I travel to hunt, I mean, when it comes waterfowl season, I go a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
And when
you can stack them up, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying I travel a lot.
Yeah.
And so when you start traveling like that and you've got to worry about bringing these birds back, I'm going to tell you what winds up happening with a lot of people. I think more waterfowl get wasted because they're worried about getting in trouble. So a lot of these birds get wasted. I'm telling you, it happens. And a lot of times I think that people don't want to waste these birds. But hell, you can't give them away hardly. You got to have a damn, more paperwork on them than you do.
To give them away.
Yeah, you got to have the birth certificate of the duck and, the date of damn death certificate and all this other stuff to be able to give them away. That it makes it so hard that a lot of birds are getting wasted, I think. So I think that some common sense changes to the law regarding waterfowl, at least, would be great. Because it's waterfowl are federally regulated. It's not just on the state level,
Correct.
Obviously. So you start talking about crossing state lines and getting into federal. Now you're talking about some serious charges.
Well, personally, I'll say something negative here, but I don't see the need of duplication of services from the federal to the state. The state can be more restrictive than the federal laws, but we can't be less restrictive. So I'm sad that it's an unfair burden on the sportsmen that contribute and pay our salaries, so to speak. But that's legislation that needs to be changed. Also, the overzealousness of a game warden is brought on by the supervisor. You know, if the supervisor is demanding this, we had a multi-state, multi-jurisdictional, federal, state connected operation that went on when I was a captain in South Georgia. And when it came to a head, my office was my headquarters was the staging area. And there was so much wildlife confiscated that shouldn't have been confiscated. It was called Operation Pisces. It concentrated on fish, but it ran into everything from wild hogs to transporting coyotes, just a myriad of just violations, drugs. But it was called Operation Pisces, pointed at fish, and we were confiscating fish that were probably caught out of a pond during a pond draining, but because it was a black bass, it fell into a different category, and they were crossing state lines. I renamed it Operation Feces instead of Pisces because that's what it turned into. So, I think that has to do with your upper level law enforcement.
Right.
100%.
And I want to reiterate on this that I am not anti-law enforcement at all. I wouldn't have had you on today. I mean, I've got good friends of mine right now that are active game wardens. Yeah. I don't have any problem with law enforcement whatsoever. It's some of the laws.
Sure.
And again, like your local deer, turkey laws, they're pretty cut and dry, right? I mean, it's not, they got some of the stuff now about because of this, the EHD and CWD that they don't want you, you got to have the clean skull cap before you can cross state lines and all. And that's all still pretty simple, easy stuff, the rules to follow.
Right.
The waterfowl stuff is the biggest problem.
Ooh, it's tough. I mean, there ain't a game warden out there unless he works Arkansas, that's steady on it all the time. And but the average game warden in these outer flyway states that don't have a lot of flyway in them, and, they're just as puzzled as a hunter is.
A lot of times, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I got checked in Louisiana. I was hunting a national wildlife refuge that you were allowed to hunt certain days of the week. And I had a guy, federal game warden, nice guy. We had no issues with him, come up on us and was checking. Start talking about identifying ducks. And it was a young of the year pintail is what it was. Yeah. It was this year's hatch. And he threw it in a gadwall pile.
Couldn't tell.
It was not a gadwall.
Right.
It was a young of the year pintail. I mean, I know it was. That's what it was. I didn't tell him any different. It would have been fine either way, but I let it go, just didn't say anything. But I think a little bit more education from the standpoint, if you're going to send a federal game warden to patrol a wildlife refuge that is centered on waterfowl, they ought to be able to identify
everything,
the ducks at least. I mean, that's a little bit different than, if you're a game warden here in Georgia, what are y'all mostly seeing? Wood ducks, hooded gangers, maybe a few ringnecks, a mallard or two, a green-winged teal. You're not really seeing a whole lot of other stuff. But if you're going to a flyway state to where, and you're going to patrol a refuge that is strictly for ducks, like this one was, you ought to be able to identify those birds.
Yeah. Not only has law enforcement changed critically in the past 20 years since I've been retired, so has our court system. So my recommendation, as an old used to be, would be the federal government needs to get with the program before a federal judge does. And when they start cutting people loose, because it takes a game warden 10 minutes to ID a duck that's laying right there in front of him, and we're expecting people to identify them while they're flying, I think legislation needs to change.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But, I mean, again, I appreciate you at least talking that up we got way sidetracked off of the sheetrock story there, but you hit a nerve when we talked about that. I'm pretty even keeled on most things, but some common sense duck hunting laws would be great. But anyway, trying to get back to the sheetrocks.
sheetrock.
Yeah, sorry guys,
Okay.
I went on a rampage there.
So I built a little soreness. So I built a house in 2020, and I was my own general contractor, and I'm going through the process. And when it got time to put the sheetrocks up, I called 3 people. I got a bid of approximately $15,000, $12,500, and $5,000. And I said, "Ooh, that's a lot of change right there." So I called the fella up, and I said, "Robbie, let me ask you something. You're way under. You're 50% plus lower than anybody else.
Typically, there's a reason why.
There's a reason why." I said, "Did you include this, that?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Mr. Howard, I don't know if you remember it or not." He said, "But when I was 16 years old, you caught me night hunting in my daddy's truck. And I had a little bit of marijuana, and I had some beer, both illegal. And you said, tear up your marijuana." And I sprinkled the marijuana on the ground, and you told me to pour my beer out, my little Miller ponies. I poured those out. And you put me in the car with you, and your partner drove us, to our house. And you went 1:30 in the morning, you knocked on the door and said, "Got your son out here. They've been night hunting in your truck." And Daddy reared up and said, "Well, I'm fixing to whoop his ass." I said, "Well, let me leave first." I said, "I remember that." He said, "I want you to know you turned my life around." And the other fellow with me, he didn't, but you turned my life around. So all I'm charging you is you're paying for my help. So I sort of got, it wasn't a kickback, but it was sure, like you said, full circle.
Yeah, it just comes full circle.
And I've had several of things similar to that happen to me since I've been retired. I couldn't accept something like that when I was working.
Right,
yeah,
right.
So,
right.
And these people, I didn't ask for it, just happened. Like when I closed my house, it's just the attorney remembered a kind thing I had done for him, and he didn't charge me for closing. And that was 2 houses at one time. It was a big chunk. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that also kind of goes to show that just because somebody does something wrong, it doesn't define them necessarily for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
Some people it might,
Yeah, some of them get rotten.
Yeah, some of them don't change, but also people get caught up and shit happens.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say what it is. Shit happens.
Absolutely.
So, but that's good that they turn that back around. So before we jump off of here, I want to talk a little bit about, let's get off of the game warden stories for a minute. Let's talk about some fun stuff. So you told me you went down a rabbit hole for a while and kind of hunted all around the world.
Yeah.
Any stories you'd like to share on that? Just anything fun that you've, interesting animals you've shot, or interesting places, people you've met, anything like that?
Yeah, I met a Grant Abramson. He runs he's got a East Cape Safari in South Africa.
Okay.
Remarkable family. I mean, just his whole family's involved in it. And they've got 250,000 acres of land that they control. It's right next to the elephant refuge.
Okay.
So, and it's he has a high fence on part of it, but most of it's just open because the cliffs are so ravenous, an animal can't get past them. So I thought it was, I was sort of proud of myself. We went out there, and the first day I got there, they picked us up at the airport. And it's not a good place to be over there for an American, but
that's most of these countries you travel to anymore.
But my guide was there, Englishman, and I brought him a pair of Steiner binoculars. It cost me about $800 here. But over there, they're $2,400 because of tariffs. And so that was that, and I bought him some 308 boat tail.
Wait a minute. You mean other countries charge tariffs?
They do. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I didn't realize that. I thought Trump was the only bad one that did that.
Yeah, no. Other countries charge tariffs for American stuff.
How about that?
Even the boat tail 308 bullets, the slugs themselves were just priced out of this world. So I put them in my my suitcase and brought them in, and supposed to make some kind of a statement as to not bringing it back, but I didn't. And so that was my tip to him.
Right.
The women that were watching the taking care of us, cooking and everything. My God, the food is wonderful over there. Just Impala shank. I shot a 28-inch Impala, and we ate the shank that night on the grill, outside grill. But I tipped the women. I said, how do I tip them? $20? He said, oh, no, they don't make $20 in a month. If you tip them, they won't come back. They'll be gone for a month. So he said, bring them some lipstick. So I went to the department store and got some samples, and man, they just tickled pink. They loved it. And I bought some stuff for their.
That goes to show you how spoiled we are here.
We are spoiled rotten. I don't blame them. They hate us because we're spoiled rotten. Everybody.
Yeah, we are.
We are. And let's see I bought some crayons and some coloring books for the school. The kids ain't got no parents,
right?
So they got a little stuff, but so we're hunting and go back when I was a kid. I watched Tarzan, and I remember, I think that's where I sort of got cranked up wanting to do something. But the animals there, it's unreal. I mean, you come up in your Land Rover and you get on top of the hill and you look, and you're looking over several 100 acres, and you see herds of zebra and wildebeest and elephants. Yeah, I mean, just all these animals. It ruins you. It's like duck hunting on the flyway versus the lake.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And but we came across a herd of zebra, and we were right in the middle of them quickly. And he said, do you want to kill a zebra? I said, a zebra? He said, no, a zebra is something a woman puts on. This is a zebra. Voices. And I said, I just don't want to shoot no horse, man. I have horses. He said, this is the story. He said, that one right there. And he pointed out a stallion that was 150 yards away. And y'all, we want to get mixed up, try to determine what zebra a man's pointing out. But this zebra, specific zebra, his tail was bit off. And here was a story. And as a conservationist, it'll hit you quickly. That zebra was an older male. And there was two younger stallions that were kicking his butt. And he said, he's kicked out of the
main herd.
The main herd. That's why he's over here. And there was a couple mares with him. And he said, here's the deal. If you don't shoot that animal, the local tribe won't have the food to eat, and we won't have the money to run our shop, our little business here. And that is lion fodder. He'll be dead within a week. The lions will take him down and eat him. I said, all right, I'll be a conservationist then. So I think it cost me $1,500, but I leveled up on him and shot him.
Beautiful animal, too.
Beautiful. I had a rug made out of him. When I was single, the rug came in handy. I mean, that was it was my bachelor pad. It's put up now. Excuse me. But that was the zebra was the funny thing, and the joy on those guys. I had a tracker, a gun bearer, another tracker, and somebody that watched our back. The week before I got there, they had a client that was charged by a water buffalo and hit, and he ended up fracturing some ribs. Luckily, that's all that happened to him. So yeah, you sort of have to have your eyes open on anything but the game warden.
I tell you, the one animal that intrigues me, I just got back from that Dallas Safari Club show up there in Atlanta. They had a week or so back, and the one African animal that really I wouldn't mind putting my hands on is a kudu.
Oh, let me tell you, I hunted the kudu. I mentioned that to you. And we came to a ravine in a mountain, and we saw a herd of probably 7 kudu, a couple huge males, way on up there, So he said, you want a kudu? I said, yeah, I want a kudu. So he put me in a spot, and then my gun bearers and the trackers, they went up with pots and pans, and they started walking down this ravine. And it was open. I could see a part just about everywhere. And as they came, I'm waiting for a quick shot. I sat there, and there was me and one of my hunters, my guide, and we're sitting there watching it. And as they worked their way in, I've driven deer before, I know how a drive works. those koodoos, they're called the gray ghost. And that's the day I learned why they call them the gray ghost. They disappeared. There was no place for them to go. It was just amazing to me. I've tracked people, I've tracked animals, and I had good eyes back then. And those animals literally disappeared. He said, "Oh, just the way it happens." I said, "Where did they go?" He said, "They're still there. We just can't see them, But I mean, there was a person every 30 yards hitting those pans as they were pushing them towards us. And that was an elusive animal that I didn't get. I killed 27 animals on that hunt over a 10-day period. And Grant and his family, they were great. They treat you like a king. But it ruins you when you come back to the States. The King's Ranch is nice. I've hunted out west. I've hunted in Alaska. And
what kind of hunt did you do in Alaska?
Well, I was after a bear, which is a nuisance animal to them, but I only had limited time to hunt, so I didn't bag a bear either. But
I got you.
I understand you got to get there early in the season because those bear they eat garbage, And it surprised me. I pulled my RV up there, 36-foot fifth wheel.
Drove it from here to there?
Yeah, and back.
I hear you, brother.
And I spent roughly 4 months on that trip. And the fishing was great. I'm trying to think the deadliest catch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw the ships. It was during their off season.
Did you go out to like Homer?
Yeah, I was right there in Homer.
I duck hunted out of Homer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a drinking village with a quaint problem is what it says.
Right. So you went out on the spit out there and then all the boats and the little bars and stuff. That's a beautiful place.
Listen, I've got a picture of my camper sitting there and the water, and there's a moose right there at my camper. And the eagles, holy smokes.
I got a funny eagle story I'll tell you in a minute.
Just all over the place, and it's sad because the eagles are at the dump. They're at the landfill.
Oh, dude, when I went up there, we flew into Anchorage, small plane, Homer, got on a little ferry boat out there off the Homer Spit and went out to the Kenai Peninsula out there. There's a little town out there called Seldovia.
Right, I went there.
You went to Seldovia?
Yeah.
So you probably went to the bar there because it's the only thing there.
It's the only thing to eat, yeah.
Yep. So you and I have been to the same place. So we went up there duck hunting. I wanted to go kill a harlequin duck and a Bear's Golden Eye, and I think I needed a white-winged scoter still at that time. So we flew in, got up there, went out there, and that was my first time ever being in Alaska. And man, we got on that boat, and one of the things I still remember vividly to this day is how clear that ocean is up there.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just the time of the year that we were there. Obviously, when we went, it was wintertime. It was cold. But anyway, water was real clear, and we went out to Seldovia and stayed that's where we were hunting camp was, so to speak. First morning we wake up, and days were short, right? So,
yeah.
Good God, man. I woke up and, you're like sitting there for hours before you can go hunt. I didn't get daylight till 9 something, if I'm remembering correctly. Me and my buddy Ethan, he'll be on this podcast here in another week or so, but we got in the boat and we went out there and we set up on this rock island. And my uncle and my cousin went with me, and for some reason he split us up and he put them somewhere else. I don't exactly remember where they were, but Ethan and I were sitting on this little rock island. And I just remember the eagles being everywhere. And he said, okay, he goes, y'all should have a good chance at Bear's Golden Eye. He's like, I'm going to give you a radio. He's like, and I got to go drop these guys off. I'm going to drop them off in a different bay, and they were going to go shoot something else. So we're sitting there, and he said, if you kill something, call me on the radio, and I'll come out. He said, do not try to walk out there and get it. The tide's ripping. It drops off real deep. You'll be dead. I said, buddy, you don't have to tell me twice. Don't worry about it. So we're sitting there. It wasn't long at all. Here comes a group of Bear's Golden Eye coming down through there. I shoot one, pummeled up a Drake. He was dead as a hammer. I get on the radio and I'm Buck. Guy's name was Buck. No answer. Well, I see these eagles start swarming around up above me, and I'm thinking to myself, God, he's gonna still get my Bear's Golden Eye. And I wanted to bring one back for taxidermy,
Right.
And my first duck in Alaska got picked up by an eagle. He picked up my big old Drake Barrels Goldeneye, flew right over my buddy and I, landed in a big tree right behind us, and proceeded to pick it to pieces. And another...
You couldn't get a shot at him?
Well, I mean, I can be kind of hot-headed anyway. I've gotten better as I've gotten older.
There you go.
But back then, I would get hot-headed real quick. And here I am thinking, not thinking, well, hell, the limit's more than one. You'll kill another one. And I couldn't get Buck on the horn there. Well, another one came down through there, and I think by this point we had 2 or 3 that we had laying out there. And I'm on the radio, and finally Buck answers, and he's like, what, y'all got anything? I said, dude, if you don't hurry up and get back over here, we're fixing to have some eagle soup for dinner tonight. I said, because if another one takes my damn gold now, we're gonna have to worry about it. So he gets back over there and he said, it's good luck to always feed the tax man first. And he said, and that's the tax man. That's the tax man right there. And I said, geez. So that was my first duck in Alaska.
Well, I'm proud you didn't shoot the
eagle. No, we didn't shoot.
But it tastes like spotted owl. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, well, I ain't never had one of them neither. But long story short, I wound up getting my Good Barrels Goldeneye, and we got our Harlequin. I got them all mounted inside the house in there. But that was a beautiful place.
Yeah,
and a beautiful. Clean. It is. I'd love to go back. My wife says if I'm not going back again without her, I think she wants to go back up there and go try to catch some halibut.
Oh yeah. I went up there in February, and I busted an axle in Homer on my RV, and they had to drive it in. It couldn't be flown in because the shocks that were on it were gas, and you can't fly it in. It has to be driven up. So they told me, they said, all right, it's going to be about 2 weeks before we can get your RV fixed. So I didn't want to get stuck. So I ended up flying back to Destin Beach and spent 2 weeks at the beach. And then they called me and said, your camper's ready. Jumped on an airplane and flew back with Delta.
I bet 4 months up there was fun though.
Oh, it's awesome, man. Now, one thing, I saw the poor. That's one thing about my travel in the United States. There's a lot of people up there that are poor.
Shit, there's a lot of people, a lot of places that are poor, but I know what you're saying.
The Indians in the West, it's sad. It's really depressive. They got the short end of the stick for sure.
Yeah.
But it's I saw some filthiness in Alaska, and it's just because they poor. They just poor, But
yeah, I don't know if you've ever hunted Mexico, but
been to Mexico, yeah.
I've hunted down there for waterfowl a few times, and you get out of those resort areas.
It goes down quick.
Buddy, it goes down quick. And I tell you, those I vividly remember I told one of the outfitters down there that I wanted to kill a black-bellied tree duck. Matter of fact, that duck right there.
Yeah.
That duck right there. I said, I want to get a black-bellied tree duck. I said, do y'all have any down here? And he said, I know a place. He said, but we got to pay the lady to hunt it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how much do we pay her? And he's like, $500. So I'm thinking $500.
Pesos.
So I'm like, talking to my buddy, I'm like, man, do we want to pay $500 to go kill this thing? And he's like, looking at me funny, and he's like, no, senor, 500 pesos. And I'm like,
was that $25?
I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, well, how much is that? But that's like Monopoly money. It's play money down there.
Yeah.
And long story short, we wound up going and we paid her to go back there and hunt her little swamp that she had the tree ducks in. And when she answered the door of her mud hut, what I would call a mud hut, I don't know if it was true mud, she opened it up and she was sweeping the floor, but the floor was dirt.
Yep.
So she was sweeping the dirt floor, and I never will forget that. I don't know why, but that image stuck in my mind, and she was so happy to get those 500 pesos. And then when we left out, what I'm assuming was maybe her son or some family member was this little bitty boy. I got a picture of him on my phone still to this day. It was a mule pulling one of them old school plows, the single plow with the long handles.
Yeah.
And that little boy had to hold, the handles were up here like this, and he was trying to steer this thing with that mule pulling it, and I got to thinking to myself, I'm like, here I am
playing a video game on a cell phone.
Yeah, I'm down here like, you know, this is fun to me. And at my time, that was probably, I don't know, the first time I ever went down there was probably, I'd have to go back and look. It was over 10 years ago, probably.
2015 for me.
Yeah, first time I went down there, you know, here I am in my 20s and can afford to go to Mexico to shoot ducks for fun. And you got this little boy down here walking behind a mule at, I don't know, 7 years old, 8 years, I don't know. And that's probably all that little boy will ever do.
Yep.
And you know, we don't realize how blessed we are here sometimes. And but I've seen the poorness. Argentina was the same way. I've seen some poor stuff down there. Some of these countries and places I've been to and traveling around and seen, but it makes you appreciate home.
It does. Yep.
Makes you appreciate home. But go ahead.
That's just the poorness. I mean, South Africa compared to Mexico, I think they're poorer, you know?
Yeah, and I've never been there yet. Yeah.
Oh, you got to go.
Oh, I'm going. I literally went to the Dallas Safari Club just to talk to them about that. I was trying to find a place that offered some waterfowl hunting down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to do. I'd love to get a kudu, but I can't go to I can't go somewhere where there's waterfowl and not waterfowl. It's in my blood. I can't. I just can't do it.
Business expense.
Yes, yeah. So I found a few places down there where we're narrowing it down, but everybody that I know that's been down there to hunt says it's a magical place you need to go.
Yep, absolutely.
But well, we're probably hitting on about 2 hours at this point. This may be a part 2 of this podcast, so we'll probably end it on that. I know that you've got a million more stories in this book, and I'm sure when you get in the truck and start riding back, you'll think of something. Man, I wish I would have told that. So I'm going to leave it open-ended. Hopefully I can get you back on one day.
All right.
I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate you making the ride over. I think everybody will enjoy listening to this, and hopefully we can have you back to talk some more stories.
I'm game when you are, brother.
All right. Well, guys, I thank y'all for listening to this. You've been listening to the Southern Flight Podcast and Mr. Howard Hensley, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in.